Welcome to the October Business of Alt Proteins seminar. Today, we're exploring how collaboration can be a powerful tool to overcome the pilot plant valley of death in scaling cultivated food products. Many startups face the daunting hurdle of moving from bench to pre-industrial scale, which typically requires substantial CapEx. The Cultured Hub, a joint venture of the Swiss companies Bühler, Givaudan, and Migros, proposes a revolutionary approach, shared resources designed specifically for cultivated food companies. My name is Lane Clark, and I'm the Senior Corporate Engagement Manager Innovation for GFI. Before we dive into the webinar, I have just a few housekeeping items. First, for those of you who may be new to the work of the Good Food Institute, we're an international nonprofit organization developing the roadmap for a sustainable, secure, and just protein supply. We identify the most effective solutions, mobilize resources and talent, and empower partners across the food system to make alternative proteins accessible, affordable, and delicious. Next, this seminar will be recorded and posted to our YouTube channel, and we'll email everyone who has registered a copy of the recording. Finally, please ask your questions in the Q&A box instead of the chat. This helps us keep track of them much more easily. You're welcome to ask questions throughout the webinar, but we'll answer them at the end. And now we're thrilled to be joined by Thierry Duvanel and Yannick Gächter, who will kick off the webinar with a presentation before we open up the Q&A. Thierry is the Director of Innovation for the Bühler Group, managing the front-end innovation activities and overseeing scouting and engagement with startups for the group. Before joining Bühler, Thierry led Mass Challenge Switzerland, the European branch of the leading global startup accelerator. And prior to Mass Challenge, Thierry co-founded two companies active in software development and medical devices, respectively, which he successfully managed and exited. Thierry holds a bachelor and a Master of Science degree in electrical engineering and is trained at the International Institute for Management Development in Switzerland. Yannick is the CEO of the Cultured Hub. Before joining the Cultured Hub, Yannick led the Innovation Center in Minneapolis for the Bühler Group, focused on innovation in sustainable plant-based proteins and driving the scale-it-up competition in North America with local partners. Yannick has a background in IT with a master's in business administration. And with that, it's my pleasure to welcome Thierry and Yannick.
Thank you, Lane. Good morning, good evening, everybody around the world. We've heard that, coming from pretty much any important places that counts with regards to this cultivated food industry or nascent industry. So I'm very happy to have the opportunity today to talk about this valley of death, as it's been sometimes named, especially for the cultivated food companies that are aiming today at scaling their products. So in order to set the context, we thought that it would be good to have a little bit of an overview of the state of this industry, or I should say nascent industry, because there's actually not so many products yet on the market for the very reason that we all know. There's no better place to start than to look at some of the very good literature issued by the Good Food Institute, and for that purpose, we looked at this very good report that is illustrated here on the right. That was issued by GFI sometimes around mid last year, 2023, if I'm not wrong. And it was actually a survey of about 32 companies, I think, that are active in the field. And I've here listed some of the key or main outcomes of this report or conclusions of the report. The first thing, and that comes at no surprise, is that most of the companies today operate still at very low level, kilogram level, if not lower. Whereas we know that the average production of one slaughterhouse, if we compare to the products to meat, is around 32-35 kilotons per year. So this gives an idea of the scale, and we have probably all of us interested in this field, this type of scope and scales. There are plans, however, to scale within the next years, and this will increase significantly the annual production. And many companies are actually ready technically to undergo such an endeavor. There's one element that is related to regulatory affairs and regulatory acceptance. We know the landscape is not easy to navigate, but one element that comes also is that in order to be able to apply for a regulatory approval in whatever territory or legislation, there's a need to be able to produce enough quantities of products in an industrially relevant environment. And guess what? Most of these companies today, or few the companies who are active in the field, don't have access to such an environment. So this gives a little bit of a portrait of where we stand today. Not even talking about the state of investment, which is in general affecting all startups across technologies, but in particular this field. So this forms a sort of a context, a ground for what we want to talk about today, which is to have access to an environment in order to help these companies moving forward from the state where it is today. One other good element that this report did was to propose a unified nomenclature for the field, and we are using this as a way to represent what we believe is the current situation in the market. So I have reproduced here on the top the different levels that are proposed by GFI in order to have a common naming and wording of these different steps, with a biomass produced which is more or less aligned with the quantities listed above. So we go from R&D, bench scale, pre-pilot and pilots to industrial, and then commodity production eventually. If we look at the development phases that companies undergoing such a pathway have to go, you can give it different names, but usually it's around process development. When we talk about 10 to 100 grams, maybe a little bit less than a kilogram of biomass. There's some sort of product optimization that takes place around 1 kilogram, which is probably where most of the companies sit today. And before jumping into commercial production, which is more in terms of tons and dozens of tons, there's this period in the middle, or this step in the middle, where you need to be able to produce your biomass in an industrially relevant environment. So it's we talk about the pre-commercial pilot or pilot plant, together with the ability to produce regulatory batches. So if we map that to the size of bioreactors, and this is not exact science, but this is just an order of magnitude to show a little bit where we stand. I think it's commonly understood that anything before a pilot is around 1 to 50, maybe 100 liters, and commercial production is going to take place with big tanks, certainly above 10,000 liters and more. And in between, we have this step, which is the famous valley of death that we were talking about. And why valley of death? Because the infrastructure which is required when you are below the, let's say, 10 kilogram, it's usually your own or shared labs that most of the companies rely upon at the moment. On the other hand, the production facility is going to be something large scale that will be most likely owned by the companies. Maybe some CMOs will get into play. But in between, we have here this pre-pilot and pilot scale facility, which costs anyway in the range of 15 to 30 million. Again, not exact science, but these are the numbers that are reported by most of the surveys. And these steps cost significant capital. It implies dilution for the companies who are actually wanting to build such an environment. And it's actually only the starting point, because you will never produce commercially in such an environment. So looking at the investment community, I think it's fair to say that VCs who are anyway reluctant to invest in steel will never invest 10, 20, 30 times in pre-pilot or pilot facilities for the sake of proving this. This is what we call the valley of death. You have very good science, very good products in becoming on the left, and production aiming to get into large scale volume on the right. And in between, there's this step that needs to be overcome. So this is the thesis for the Cultured Hub that we're talking about today. We're introducing the Cultured Hub. It's It's a scale up as a service for cultivated food. The main value proposition is listed here on the right. It's to allow companies who would come to such an environment, to the cultured hub, to save time and money in order to scale up the process, to keep equity and IP, so no dilution, but also no risk of having leaks in the very core of the intellectual property. And it allows the companies to focus on what is important and not to build an environment which is going to be used only for the scale of, for the purpose of scaling up. We are located, the Cultured Hub is located at the heart of Europe in tiny Switzerland. I've just reminded for those who haven't had the chance to travel to this country that is geographically at the center of the European continent, but within very easy distance from most of the big places around the continent. The labs are actually located just 15 minutes from Zurich Airport, very convenient to travel in and out. And the Zurich area is actually very dense with a number of innovation centers in the food sector, as well as academia, presence of big universities. So that's for the geographical location. Who are we? Who is the Cultured Hub? It's actually a joint venture between three companies active in food. Bühler, that I represent today, we are an equipment manufacturer known for engineering and equipment for most of the big food manufacturers around the world. Migros is the largest retail company in Switzerland, but they also operate their own production facilities. And Givaudan is the global manufacturer of flavors and fragrances, very active in all sorts of ingredients for flavors and textures. So when you marry the skills and the background of these three companies, I think it's quite easy to see that there is real value behind the Cultured Hub, in the sense that you can tap into various parts of skills in order to travel through this path of scaling cultivated food companies. With this, I will hand over to my colleague Yannick, who is running the Cultured Hub. He will now tell us more about what's inside the box. Yannick, over to you.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Hello, everyone. It's a great pleasure to be with all of you. Thank you, GFI, for having us, and thank you, Thierry, for leading us into this first introduction already of who we are and who the Cultured Hub is. So with that, would love to dive a little bit deeper into what that means, who the Cultured Hub is, what you can find here as well. And taking reference right away here to an earlier slide showing that GFI nomenclature of what scale up means, at what phase. So when we remember that slide that we had earlier on, looking at that piloting phase in the very middle, which is well known as the Valley of Death in piloting, we would typically start engaging on the service side when it comes to the process transfer and optimization. So that's going beyond the bench scale already, moving forward then into the scale-up process. So what does that mean at the very beginning? It means optimizing and stabilizing a process in a facility, working on upstream development work, but also working on downstream and formulation development of a final finished good product in the food industry. As we move forward then, we go into process scale-up. The second phase is very much about creating a proof of concept, creating a robust process behind a product, and then starting to look at the commercial scale-up. This is what we call the mid-phase in our facility at the moment. And as we go onto the right side here, we're really looking at pre-commercial manufacturing at around the 1,000 liter scale. This is used to really prove and demonstrate a batch production process, also then used into early commercial supply. But I'd love to show a little bit deeper what this means in the facility on the next slide. Please, Thierry. Exactly. So what we see here is we're taking the same colors from the last slide that you see and putting some information behind it as well in how it works in the facility. So what we are is a scale-up as a service facility, purely dedicated to cultured foods, be it in the meat, the seafood, or the dairy industry, wherever you find yourself playing, or also as an enabler with this entire ecosystem. What we have is a fully installed facility. It's flexible wherever possible, and a plug-and-play option for many new technologies as well as they come in. If we look at the early stage process transfer optimization topics, We see that in the 1 to 20 liter scale at the moment as a starting point, a jump off. This is currently live in the facility. We'll show a few pictures in a little bit as well of what this looks like. In the next stage, optimizing, doing a small scale up work. This typically means running somewhere in the 20 to 200 liter range. And as we move beyond that, we see a bit of a separation of offering here. One is on the pre-commercial pilot scale up. So we're looking at bringing process to that 1,000 liter scale, which helps design what the future could look like as well in optimizing a manufacturing process. And we see this second box in this field as well, looking at regulatory batch and small commercial. This is something we will launch into next year. A lot of the reason for that is this involves a lot more on the process side in terms of approval standards and food production environments. So how does that work? Very early on, it's all about testing the scalability of a process. So looking at cell growth, looking at differentiation processes, looking at cell densities as well as we go forward, and really taking the product from an upstream process in the bench all the way down to finished good product in the downstream processing post-harvest as well. This is an environment that helps you create material for application testing on the finished goods, to work on regulatory approvals, look at consumer tastings as well as we move forward in different regions of the world. We work with multiple cell lines, so very flexible in terms of setup in the facility. An important point here to mention also is the scale down process. Once something is optimized and improved at a certain scale, to be able to take that down to the smaller volume again, stabilize the bench scale, that future scale up runs can be efficient and cost effective. What I'd like to mention here a little bit more though is going beyond the actual facility, and that means additional services that we can offer as part of the process as well. This can then be looking at product analytics to understand what the product is like, what it's behaving like, looking at professional and consumer sensory panels. So that really gives you an insight into how is your product comparing to traditional products on the market, but also other products that are being in development, looking at regulatory guidance, consulting on the process and how to optimize topics, but also act as a launch pad to new investors and into the industry. Something we also want to do within this environment of additional services is be able to connect you to the right people, the right companies, the right skill sets to solve any kind of challenges that might come up. Now, on the next slide, we go into a bit more detail of what it actually looks like in a facility. This is something we spent many years planning and trying to figure out and designing how to best optimize a facility like this in piloting. We see here our building on the ground floor. We're roughly 600 square meters of processing space, 6,500 square feet, if I've done my calculation right into feet. So we see here in different colors, again, the process transfer and optimization stage. If you look at the facility at the bottom, you see this here in the cell culture, bench scale up to 8 liters, and then moving upwards a little bit into the process facility, 20, 50 liters. We see the blue part split across two different areas, 20 to 50 liters, and then 200 liter environment, which also comes with all its support vessels and technologies required. And the final stage, what we call process module 3, is at the 1,000 liter scale, including all the vessels to support running batches at that size. What you see in gray from left to right over the top is also processing areas. One room dedicated to really downstream processing. When we speak downstream, this is post-harvest. Once cells have been harvested from the process to actually structure, form, shape, and develop finished goods. On the very right side, we see a media preparation room. This is a room dedicated with equipment to really develop media, prepare the media that goes into the process. And then we have various facilities for cryo storage, freezing capabilities. What you see in white, the visitor area and the viewing corridor is really the place to engage. This is where we will host events. This is where we currently also have investor pitches, etc. going on, and where we also aim to have many, many tastings in the future to bring consumers and customers close by to your products, wherever we can support doing that. So if you need a location to bring your products, develop your products, and to showcase it, we're ideally set up to support you in that phase as well. Good. On the next slide, please, Thierry. We have just a short overview of the main equipment. There's a lot more detail behind this that we were happy to discuss with you as well. Feel free to reach out on this. We've got the 3 main areas again, where we look at process module 1, more on the lab scale, bench scale equipment. This also involves some analytics at that point in time. We then have the process scale up, 20, 50, 200 liters. This is all stainless steel stir tank reactors, also with its feed and buffer vessels, and process module 3, which is then really more on the pre-commercial manufacturing scale. But something I want to draw your attention to on this slide is really on the bottom right, process utilities. It's something that's often underestimated in terms of its value, especially when we look at the pure water here and the quality of water. When we move forward into creating a manufacturing process, the quality of water that goes into a process becomes very critical, also on the regulatory approval side. And we within this building have invested nearly half of the finance that go behind building this facility into the utilities to ensure we have the right quality going into this process and guarantee that the inputs that come into the bioreactor are at the quality that you need to manufacture in the future as well. So it's something that's quite critical to us that we're happy to showcase as well and explain more in detail when you come and visit. Then finally, some impressions. The facility is live. These are actual pictures within the facility from the past couple of weeks. What we don't see here yet is the active customer projects that are ongoing. Unfortunately, we can't show those. We don't want to show these. These are confidential. What we see here on the left side is the process transfer and optimization stage. This is a room in room here built with its lab space, with all the equipment as well. You see a glimpse in the middle left as well of the visitor space, a very open area with a kitchen to showcase products. In the middle, surrounded in blue, we see the process scale up. This is really all these mobile vessels that we have combined with a 200-liter scale to start scaling up a process. And as we move to the right, we see a more fixed installed pre-commercial manufacturing scale that is flexible to handle different processes. So just a short glimpse of the facility. I'm only showing the process areas here that are relevant in terms of the biomass production. Many more pictures we're happy to show in the future as well. Good. And what we would like to do as well in the next 2 slides is show you 2 examples of what a customer project could look like. These are 2 cases that we're currently working on. Obviously, depending on the cell lines that you work with, depending on where you're at in the scale of your company and what kind of product you create, this can vary very highly. So the process is very customized also to you as a customer, as a company, and to your project and challenges. This first example is a company that has its own cell lines that's really looking to characterize these beyond the bench scale, starting to scale up into slightly larger volumes and develop a scale-up process that is replicable, that we can do over and over again with the same quality and robustness that's required. So typically a process, once it's defined as a project, we'll go into a tech transfer stage, bringing in the cell lines, creating a cell bank, stabilizing, replicating what you already have in your environment in a new CDMO environment. There's a few value adds here that I'd like to point out for the specific customer case. The first challenge and value add for them was really to showcase that they can bring a process outside of their own environments, outside of their lab into a new facility, and be able to move forward there as well. This can be very relevant looking into the future, moving into manufacturing plants, or also building various different plants around the world to move forward and bring your cell lines into those environments. The second stage was around process development. This is really optimizing the cell lines with its media and develop a consistent replicable cell growth. This is, again, relevant to improve cell densities, to create the first metrics around the biomass, which can then be helpful in future discussions as well with customers and investors. We then move forward in the project on a small batch production. This is to validate that the process optimization that was done in process development is functioning the way it's expected to run. Having this replicable and scalable process is a huge value add as a showcase as well. And the final step in this project specifically was to scale this down again into the bench scale to optimize, solidify this as a strong bench line, a strong baseline process that can be used for further runs. Now, the second project we'd like to talk to and discuss a little bit more is at a slightly later stage. This is a startup that has a very proven bench scale process already, has stably run at a 10-liter scale, and is really seeking to develop more pilot level production run. The main background behind this step is using this facility to stop piloting and to move forward into a Series B funding to really move closer to final production. The process starts in a very similar environment. It's making sure that the cell lines and the environment is working the way you expect it to from what you have in your facility in the tech transfer stage. We then look at the process optimization stage, already slightly larger scaled, running intermediate biomasses, looking at product inoculation, proof of concepts, and ensuring the process is stable and behaving the way you would like it to before we move on into actual piloting stage. We then moved on here on the 200-liter batch production runs, creating a continuous run with the same quality outputs. Something that's very valuable for this customer here was understanding the cost calculations behind all this, from the process, all the ingredients that go into the media as well. In addition to that, then also what it means to run in this process with its various utilities involved. So this creates a good baseline to then start designing and discussing what a future plant could look like. The next step is creating a finished goods. We are speaking about food, the future of food. The biomass itself needs to be somehow transformed, shaped, and developed into the finished product that consumers would like to consume. And part of that is making sure we have a high quality harvest from these cell lines in a healthy environment, that it's a sterile environment to do so, and then create these finished goods. And that then goes forward straight into investor tastings, regulatory batch productions. Here, the value is really providing a cost-effective way to create these batches for a regulatory environment and to gain investor traction. And this can happen within our facility as well, or you can take this biomass and finished goods also to your site again. These are just two examples of what a customer project looks like on our side. Obviously, the facility is built to be very flexible, and this depends very highly on what you would like to achieve and the challenges you would like to solve. And this is what we're here for, to enable you to do in a more time and cost-effective manner. Good. For those of you who recognize this picture, the famous Death Valley, we'd like to refer back to this a little bit as a jump-off point of why we are here and why we've created this. We're fortunate to have this facility live now, really to have been able to take investors on board to invest into scale so that you don't have to do this. It is a big capital investment. This piloting stage is a temporary stage that you would like to go through, and we would like to help you create a bridge here to move forward into creating goods for the markets. So we've done this. There's no need for you to reinvest into steel. The second point, we have the resource and skills to accelerate this transition from bench to factory. One within the facility and the team that we have here, but we also have access to a huge skill set around us that we can bring into the project depending on the challenges and the problems that come up as well. And a very important point, we want to do all this while keeping your IP safe and avoiding your capital dilution. So really creating a very transparent way to engage going forward, a transparent way for you to do the piloting stage. We are open and ready to invite you. Very excited to see you soon. So with that, I would also like to announce that we have our grand opening on the 3rd and 4th of December this year. A lot of you on the call hopefully have already reached or seen this invitation coming to your inbox. If you have not, we would love to extend the invitation to you as well through this very call here. We do have limited spaces, but reach out and we're happy to discuss how we could get you on board if you are around anywhere in Switzerland during this time. Feel free to let us know on our emails here and reach out. And with that, and a short presentation of who we are and what we do, we'd love to open the floor to any questions you might have. And thank you for being here.
Thank you so much, Yannick and Thierry. Excellent presentation. And we have a lot of questions. So we'll take the next 30 minutes or so to try to get through as many of them as we can. Starting off with a pretty general one, do you exclusively focus on cultivated, or do you also include precision fermentation?
The facility today is exclusively focused on cultivated food products. However, if you are in precision fermentation, do reach out. We have a lot of partners that we can connect you to also help you move forward in that environment.
Excellent, thank you. And is the Cultured Hub only a private venture, or does it also get funding from the state?
It is a private venture funded by the industry partners that Thierry also introduced at the beginning of the presentation. Okay.
Now, moving into sort of some questions around the cost. You have an estimated minimum cost of a process. Is it, you can give a ballpark. And then similar to that, could you share what a typical business model is for working with you all, and how does it help startups crossing key scale-up hurdles?
Perfect. Thank you for those questions. So diving right into it, the projects are very diverse in terms of what they look like. So the costing model behind that is also very dependent on what the project is. But to make two examples, on the more basic level scale, where we know what a process would look like, we can define that very, very well. We typically would engage on a business model around a certain time frame in the facility, a couple of days or a week, and charge directly around that. That process would typically start around the $10,000 mark, US dollars, when you're really engaging for a short term. And the project then continues all the way to long-term recurring projects that we define on a very individual basis. The business model costing is always around a specific time, a specific challenge that's to be solved. We try to break this down in a very transparent way by starting off with a clear proposal that's developed together with you as a customer, to know exactly what you're getting into, and to also break that up into individual pieces that we can then line up one by one in helping you scale up to the larger scale.
Thank you. And related to that, this person is wondering whether the cost for the client includes all or part of the initial CapEx and amortization of the facility.
Also a great question. So the CapEx is done. We have spent that money. The costing to be a sustainable business, and we're also a business needs to be sustainable, obviously includes also the cost of us putting cash into this facility. However, in terms of the business model and how we engage, this is a very cost-effective model where we keep price at a point of covering costs on our side to ensure to add value to the facility.
Moving to bioreactor size, what is the typical bioreactor size that you work with when you have clients who are proving their technology for a Series A round? And what bioreactor size will your facility max out at?
All right, I'll start with the max out. Currently, the largest vessel that we have in the facility as a single large is a 1,000 liter working volume. We always speak, by the way, of working volumes in our slide decks. This is really the volume that can be produced and worked at a continuous level. So that's, I think, a very important part to be at as well. When we look at typical ranges we work with, we typically like to engage on the liter scale. Anything that's really bench scale development work, there's very good partners we would be happy to connect you as well that are good at much more specialized on this side. We typically engage then on the 2 and 5 liter scale. Series A typically we'll be looking at least a 50 liter environment, potentially 200 liter already.
Great. So 50.
Yeah, 50.
Great. How much time should we estimate for a project starting from tech transfer to commercialization, including regulatory and FTO studies?
It's a really good question, one that's quite challenging to answer as well, depending on the region that you're active in, especially on the regulatory side. That's something we can have long discussions on with regulatory experts on that side as well. And typically a tech transfer, depending on the complexity of the process, anywhere in the 1 to 2 week frame, if it's a stable process. Moving on then step by step, depends highly on how stable the process is already operating. And the starting point that we're going from. If you have a stable process running already at a larger liter scale, with a stable cell line that is working well, that can happen quite fast as well, in the weeks to month time frame.
Switching gears a little bit, can you speak towards a little bit about your centrifuge technology?
Very specific questions. I like it. We have a few centrifuge technologies in the facility that I'm happy to share detailed information on. Feel free to reach out. Centrifuges specifically on the early stage and tech transfer to understand the cell biomass, but we also use centrifuges when it comes to harvesting. We have multiple different technologies available there.
Maybe one element, if I may, here.
Go for it.
We have a number of steps that we have designed so that they are ready to be used and as generic as possible. But this space, as you have seen, is also very open for customization. Of course, this has impacts and repercussions on the way the company would work with a cultured hub, but there's always the possibility, and actually it's most welcome, to explore new solutions, especially on the downstream side. So centrifuge is one of the separation steps that we have designed into the processes or the process framework that we have. But it is the intent also to have that space to explore other solutions that would be brought by the companies.
All right, we have several questions, not surprisingly, around IP. So we'll start with probably the most expected one, which is how do you ensure confidentiality when different clients are using your facilities? And what if the clients are competitors?
Also a great question. So IP is at the core of what we do. Being a CDMO, this is what we focus on, and client confidentiality is what we do. We've done this through a few different ways. And obviously, every single time, feel free to engage with us and we can discuss how to make you most comfortable in this environment. What we do specifically, and you've seen a little bit of this in the layout of the facility, is we've actually separated out these different rooms into lockable areas, like we can close off specifically for you where you get your own key to ensure the IP stays within that environment. The other point is we would also very happily have you in the facility. The reason why I'm mentioning this specifically is that it helps you also control the information that is shared and being used, where we engage specifically on information that we must need to operate a process. So if there's any detailed information that you would not like even us to see or be engaged in specifically, you can control those decisions directly. So be involved in that. What we then try to do is also within the team, separate across different projects the skill sets. At the starting point at the moment, we try to do this wherever possible. When it comes to direct competitors, we try to manage that a little bit via bookings as well, and reservations of the facility to try to separate when there's a direct competitive environment going on. Obviously, always keeping transparency and involving you in who else is there.
And
I'm not sure, Thierry, if you want to add a few more statements to that.
Yeah, I mean, nothing more specific. In general terms, one of the partners, as you have understood, is the company that pays my salary, Bühler. We've been in this business, not this one specifically, but in a business that has the same approach or same DNA for more than 160 years. So this is at the core of our values, to be able to serve companies competing on the same market with a high level of confidentiality. So we've actually made sure that we serve our customers at the Culture Hub with the same values. This is core to our values, really.
from an IP attorney in the audience, are you using a standard agreement or negotiating case by case?
Very good. We have both avenues available at the moment. We're quite flexible in how we design that.
And still on the topic of IP, how are the downstream discovery assets returned, distributed, shared, relinquished?
That is defined case by case with the customer involved in that project to either bring that product straight back to that customer, or in the case of it staying destruction on site as well and removal of product. It is not our intent to be storing long-term products in the facility nonetheless.
Okay. This person wants to know which bioreactor companies are you working with and which downstream companies?
Great question. So we have different companies engaged in the facility. We're not partnering specifically with one company to bring equipment into the facility. The reason for that is we want to guarantee and make sure that we have also future-proofed, bring in the right technologies for you to be able to bridge this piloting step and to bring in new technologies. What you see at the moment, there are a few different companies engaged. I can say as much as on the stainless steel equipment, we have one vendor out of Switzerland that has delivered most of that equipment. When we look at the smaller bench scale environment, we have a company out of Spain and a company out of the US that has delivered a lot of that equipment. Downstream, in a similar fashion, that is a room that we're developing quite heavily now in the next few months as well to make sure we have different technologies. This will be a variety of different companies and vendors.
Excellent. I'm going to move now into some questions around the business, and then there'll be some around science. The first is, will you be sharing case studies of successes and failures as time moves forward?
This is something we would love to do wherever possible to support the industry in its growth and its learning. Clearly at the core here is the IP again and confidentiality of customer projects. So that can only be done where and if customers would agree to share certain information or share certain learnings with the wider audience. But being part of this industry and then supporting each other in the growth and creating this nascent industry, we would love to be engaged in working together with GFI, for example, in sharing certain information.
Thank you. And then are you interested in working with companies primarily in the short term, or are you also focused on long-term relationships? Like, would you participate in milestone payments? Would you reconnect with companies as they grow?
We would definitely like to build long-term relationship. Also, the piloting stage, in our opinion, is not a one-off stop where a certain pilot is done or completed. It's really more an extended workbench type model to continue to support each other's growth. That is also then defined in how we engage on the business model side and how we create successful outcomes together. So long-term engagement in helping this industry grow.
And then moving on to science, are you helping with structured cultivated meat? Maybe Thierry, Bühler's knowledge could be helpful here.
Yeah, so as you've seen as part of the equipment, we have no specific avenues for the texturing, but this is where the different skills of the partners to this joint venture, it is a joint venture, as we've said, play. So Bühler brings to the table all the knowledge that we have in plant protein texturing for a long time, and through our innovation work, also novel approaches in the field. The idea was to focus on the biomass production all the way down to the downstream processing, separation, availability of the biomass. The texturing itself is, of course, something that we can look at from a collaboration standpoint with various partners or possibilities that we have around. Again, Switzerland is a small country. Traveling from the cultural hub into any innovation center or university will not be more than a matter of a few minutes or half an hour, let's say, and having access to such infrastructure is easy.
Do you scale up suspension as well as adherent cells? Another very specific question.
Good question.
Also a
Yannick.
good question. The answer is both. The facility is designed and built as flexible as possible. Being that flexible also comes, and we need to be very open on this, it creates certain efficiency in the process, which means it won't be 100% the perfect process always for every startup, which is why this tech transfer stage and early discussion to understand the match of equipment and processes with every startup and project is very relevant. But we do work with both types.
So we have a couple of questions that are a little bit related. One is what was the most difficult part of building the hub? And the other one is if someone still wants to create their own facility, do you have any pitfalls to warn them of, any words of advice?
Both very good questions. I'll start with the first one. I think this is something that motivated me personally very much as well to get engaged here, is such a large scale collaboration between industry partners to support an industry growth and supporting startups and creating an environment where the investment is done to do so. I think that one challenge is bringing companies together and creating an environment like this. I think the other challenge was really designing and creating a specific layout that can support as many companies as possible. So how do you design a pilot facility that needs to be this flexible? That is a big challenge. And one that everyone who's engaged with me in the past and been in the facility before knows as well, we have built in a facility that was a building that used to be food production as well. So there's a lot around building itself that is a challenge. And the third part that I'd like to mention and reiterate again is utilities. And I think utilities is also a major area for pitfalls for anyone building a pilot facility. So I think if you do design and want to build your own facility, reach out and connect early to someone who can support you in developing and creating that. And also for us, if you are designing one and would like to build one, feel free to engage nonetheless. Also to test and see if what you are designing and building works with your current processes and is scalable. Maybe a few insights, Thierry, if you want to add a few more from Bühler's side maybe as well.
Yeah, it's a food safe environment. So it's two words on a slide or on paper, but it's a lot of effort behind. And it means utilities, as Yannick said. It means traceability. It means organization of the teams. Everything that the regulatory approval endeavor means. So we've designed this environment so that you would not have to go through all these steps. It doesn't mean that you will not have to implement them for the production facility, but you could then use those that we have deployed at the Cultured Hub as a model or as a framework, as a pattern for your future production. So that was also the intent.
I'd like to take just a brief moment to deviate from audience questions for a moment to ask you specifically to talk about how critical collaboration is to the cultivated meat industry. I think that we have seen over the past couple of years how difficult it is to overcome this valley of death. And I know that you touched on this some in your presentation, but I think it bears repeating now.
Yeah, so I think the very nature of the science is actually very much calling for collaboration. Everybody's talking about the cultivated food or cultivated meat industry. That's why, in a slightly provocative manner, on my first slide, I put the nascent industry. We are at the very beginning. So we're all learning together on that. There are questions that arise at every level. We've seen over the last years a strong focus on the upstream part, cell line development. We see a lot of different projects around bioreactor design and optimization. We start to see more happening on the downstream side and also coming, but it's something that we are still discovering in the grand scheme of things, the texturing part. All of that means the skills need to be bought by different players. And this is also what we try to embody here with the Cultured Hub. We didn't go as Bühler or as a unique company behind that. It's a joint venture. It's an alliance between different players. There are 3 joint venture players, the ones that have been listed, Bühler, Migros, and Givaudan. But by extension, the ecosystem of the entire industry is present in this project. We need to recognize that there's a lot to learn, and in a way, we are still also learning with this.
Thank you. So we'll dive back into the audience questions here. And I just realized we might want to stop sharing the screen so we can see you guys a little larger, although the dog has been wonderful. Okay, so somebody's asking another question around the capabilities that you have. Do you have 3D printing capabilities?
We do not have a 3D print capability in the facility right now. It is something we are looking at, and if there is interest or you have one, please feel free to reach out.
Okay. And this is interesting. Will you help your customers with consumer education since Migros is part of the JV?
Very good question. So this is clearly also part of the joint venture and something we want to do. Migros is very aware of the consumers. They understand consumer behavior very well. And as soon as there is interest from startups to engage in this area or to learn more, I'm happy to bring the right people into the room as well.
And to what extent is your facility interested in performing its own research and engaging in government-sponsored and European research projects?
In its own research, very limited. This is a pilot facility for startups to utilize, for companies to utilize to scale up. However, where there are opportunities to work with the startup and potential grants to collaborate on, I'm happy to engage. The facility is there for scale development work for startups, not for our own development work.
Okay.
In line, yeah.
And other than regulation, do you provide services regarding institutional difficulties such as consumer acceptance and cultivated meat comprehensibility? Anything that goes a little wider?
Yeah, so these are all services that we're looking to develop into next year as well and to build up. Wherever we see opportunities, develop services to solve certain challenges, just to support a startup in moving this direction. What we will do is reach out to our entire ecosystem, also utilize the ecosystem of the joint venture partners. So that Bühler, through Thierry just mentioned as well, going forward, is to really make sure that's at the table. And when we speak about the hub, that it's not just a facility for piloting, but it adds a lot more value to you as well in solving those challenges. Not active today, but definitely looking into.
Excellent. We have some more specific scientific questions. Do you have experience with plant cell suspension for plant protein production?
So our team has experience with plant cells in previous jobs and lives. However, in the facility, we have not run a project just yet on this. We have a bit of interest around that, and yeah, are looking to engage on plant cell as well.
Great. And are your bioreactables suitable for biomass mycelium fermentation?
Less so. The focus really is on cultivated food products. The technologies could be utilized for different aspects. I think a topic that's very high in our radar is sterility of processes, ensuring quality of outputs. And we want to make sure that the environment stays safe for cultivated food products at this point in time.
Would you be able to share a little bit more information about the cell harvesting options?
So different technologies available. I'm happy to go into detail and dive on that offline as well. So feel free to reach out on that. This can be different membrane filtration technologies. This could be technologies on centrifugation. Depending on the process and what you would like, that can be adapted as well. At the moment, centrifuge technologies in the facility, both on small and piloting stage environments.
So can you maybe share what would be your ideal client who would be perfectly positioned to partner with you all?
That is a really cool question. For us, that is someone who ideally understands at a small bench scale environment, 5-liter environment, their process very well, has a stable cell line, a stable optimized media environment already, that is ready to really drive forward and push forward to where it can have an impact for people and planet. So someone who is ready to scale, has a team and the know-how ready to go, that would like to engage, move into this pilot facility very fast in scaling up, and looking to then go into more commercial environments.
It is sometimes, sorry, it is sometimes hard to map that to a certain level of investment, because we hear that a lot. Is it seed or Series A? It's hard to tell because these notions have changed over the last years anyway. But as Yannick said, it's a company that has enough stability at small scale to start looking seriously at a industrially relevant environment in order to transfer them to manufacturing.
Okay, we're gonna, I think, come to the end of all these questions soon, but you have been wonderful in answering them. I know that there are quite a few that have come in. It's been great to see so much interest. So what other cell types besides animal ones would you be able to grow?
Good question. From a technology perspective, many different types, so feel free to reach out. The facility is flexible and can do many things. At the moment, we've set a clear focus on mammalian cells. But think outside the box, we're happy to engage, so feel free to reach out.
Okay. What types of bioreactors do you have? Just CSTR?
Depends a bit on the scale and the volume. Thierry, you're free to engage as well. At the moment, on the stainless steel larger environments, it's stir tank, but we do have technologies also on small scale orbital and also wave technologies. And that is the starting point of the facility. As Thierry has already mentioned earlier on, it's really to build on and to grow as well. And if you have any great technologies that you would like to test and optimize through a full process line as well, also great to engage on that topic.
This is an interesting one. Will the JV invest in subsequent funding rounds for companies that have been in your facility?
That is a very good question. At this point, the culture clearly is not an investment vehicle itself. If a joint venture partner would like to invest or be part of any of those discussions, those links can be made. Depending on the environment, there might be interest, but that's something for the joint venture partners to engage and decide on. Maybe Thierry, you could shed a bit more light on that question.
Yeah, I mean, Bühler is an equipment provider and an engineering company. So we, from an innovation perspective, we have a very clear rule, which is not to invest in companies that are or can become our customers, for the very reason that we can't have a favorable approach to some customers and not others. So having said that, we have an ecosystem of friends and investment firms that is quite wide, and we're always happy to make connections. This is, I think, in the interest of the whole industry to move this forward. But directly, the Cultured Hub is not intended or has not been designed to become an investment vehicle.
It can be a home. The visitor space we spoke about is definitely a place where these engagements can happen with investors, and through the network and the partnerships, bring those people to the table in the facility.
Okay, is there any huge knowledge gap between the different relevant sectors of the cultivated meat value chain?
Huh. And you come up with that as a last question. I'll give the understanding, which is looking at this since now, I don't know, 4 or 5 years. I think a lot of attention has been put on what I call in general terms the upstream part. I think there's not too many big question marks today on cell lines, bioreactors choices, and to some extent the first step of separation, biomass separation. I'm not saying that everything is solved and it's a walk in the park, but we have several options on the table. The very nature of the actual product, which is to be produced, is still relatively open. There are texturing questions, and due to the heterogeneity of the product, the involvement of connective tissues, fat, and other material in general, heme, it's something that is relatively open and where there's probably a slightly bigger gap to cross at the moment. This is also why we've invested in this environment. It's to hopefully be able to discover those challenges faster.
Thank you so much. I know that was a tough one to end on, but I can't tell you how many more questions we're still having come in. So we do, however, have to end here. Thank you so much, Thierry and Yannick, for a really engaging, interesting presentation and for what you're doing to support collaboration in the industry. I also want to thank the audience for being very engaged and asking really excellent questions. A reminder that this seminar will be recorded and available on our YouTube channel, and we'll also email a copy of the recording to everyone who registered for the session. And just thank you. If you have interest in getting in touch with us, you can email corporate@gfi.org, and you'll have more information in the email that's coming your way. So thank you all so very much, and I hope you have a good rest of your day or evening.
Likewise, it was a pleasure to talk about that, and thanks for the engaging discussions, questions, and first and foremost, thank you to GFI for facilitating this. Really cool.
Our pleasure.
Yeah, thanks for taking the time to be part of this, and thank you, Lynn, for recording.
Bye, everyone.